Pitching in a contract year once again, Edwin Diaz had a great season in 2025. Now the question is, how much do the Mets pay to keep him?
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the #1 daily podcast in the New York Mets. If you want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today. Well, on yesterday's show, I talked about Pete Alonso's free agency, and I think the Mets are in a very similar boat with both Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz. These guys technically are still under a contract. They have to opt out of their deals. For Pete, it's a pretty clear-cut choice. He's got a $24 million player option. He's going to opt out of that. Now, Edwin Diaz, a little more nuanced potentially, because you still have 2 more guaranteed years and a third-year club option. But after pitching to a 1.63 ERA, and if you look at the market, Edwin Diaz once again will be the top closer available. It makes all the sense in the world to opt out. But last time around, Edwin Diaz never even got to free agency. There is a 5-day window after the season ends where players have an exclusive negotiation window with their club. And the Mets actually came to a deal with Edwin Diaz before he hit the open market, which is very rare. We never see deals struck in that 5-day window. But for Edwin Diaz, he bucked the trend and got $102 million to do so. But it was a contract that was team-friendly in ways. We'll talk about all the specifics in the next segment. But the Mets were able to lower that average annual value because they were able to bake in a bunch of deferred money. In return for that, Edwin gets an opt-out after the 3rd year, which he'll now exercise. Also, the Mets, for giving him that opt-out, got the club option on the back end. But ultimately, a contract that was beneficial to both sides did work out for both sides. The only thing that didn't work out in the Mets' favor was the fact that Edwin Diaz hurt his knee celebrating for Team Puerto Rico after signing that deal. But the last 2 seasons, he has been a very good closer for the New York Mets. And he was elite again this past season. A 1.63 ERA with 98 strikeouts and 66 1/3 innings pitched. If you look at the data, his expected ERA was 2.39. That was in the 99th percentile. The expected batting average against, 173, also in the 99th percentile. His 38% strikeout rate in the 99th percentile. Still averaging 97 miles per hour in his fastball. Batters hit 133 against his fastball with a whiff rate nearly of 40%. It was at 39.4. The whiff rate on his slider was 44% as batters hit just 179 against it. Still the same 2 pitches, fastball, slider, still a very effective reliever. You are looking at right now a game that still has plenty of pitchers going deeper and deeper into their 30s and being effective. Kenley Jansen's 38, just had a good season. Aroldis Chapman just had a great season at 37. Now, for Chapman in particular, the velocity is still there. It's still as good as any pitcher in baseball. That's why he's so effective. Also, this past year, he just learned how to pitch better than he ever has before, with his sequencing being different. They, for the first time ever, had catchers setting up on the outside of the inside of the plate throughout all of Chapman's career. It was just the catcher was right behind the dish and he just trusted his movement and just basically threw the ball by people. Now all of a sudden he was locating and he was unbelievable. There's no reason to think that Edwin Diaz can't continue to evolve over time and still find plenty of success. He's going to his age 32 season. I think you're looking at age 32, 33, 34, 35, maybe 4 more seasons where he can be at this level. Granted, if that fastball dips and instead of 97, it's 95, and if that slider goes from 89 to 85, there is a world where Edwin Diaz could fall off a little bit. But the season that he just put up warrants getting paid and getting paid a lot of money over a long-term deal. It's just a matter of what the Mets are willing to give Diaz at this time compared to what they gave him last time around. He's going to say, well, I had a 1.63. Last time it was a 1.31. What's the difference? Well, the difference is last time Edwin Diaz hit free agency, it was off of a season where he struck out half the batters that he faced. Literally. That's not just an exaggeration. He literally had a strikeout rate of 50.2%, 118 strikeouts in 62 innings pitched. Unbelievable stuff. He was averaging, again, 99 back then with a 91 mile per hour slider. So can Edwin Diaz have the longevity to be worth another 5-year deal? And then do you have to pay him what you did last time? Do you have to pay him more? Is there inflation involved where he needs to get a deal that pays him $25 million per season? Is there a 6-year that has to get tacked on? Like, how crazy can the negotiation get for Edwin Diaz? And at what length should the Mets go to bring him back? There are other options we'll talk about in the final segment today that the Mets could pursue to bring a closer in-house. There's a guy that was great for the Cardinals for years, Ryan Helsley. He's a free agent. What could go wrong? Okay, probably not Helsley, but there are options. So what we're going to do throughout the rest of the show in the next segment, we're going to talk about the contract that he signed last time and what it might look like this time. Then in the final segment, we'll talk about what the alternatives could be and if there are better options, how can the Mets build a better bullpen around Edwin Diaz in 2026? A lot to cover throughout the show. Next up, we're going to talk about the contract. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. You're going to get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building a same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Help us get to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. I'd love to get there by the end of the month. We're getting closer and closer. I really do appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so let's talk about Edwin Diaz's current contract. He's on a 5-year, $102 million deal. He collected a $12 million signing bonus back in 2022 when he signed that contract. So that meant $90 million to be doled out over the next 5 years. But there was a lot of deferred money in the deal, $26.5 million in deferred money to be exact. $5.5 million was deferred each season from 2023 through 2025. And then $5 million would be deferred in 2026 and 2027 if he does opt into the deal, which, again, he probably will not. And the reason why he won't, he's already collected in cash $47.5 million of that $102 million deal, but also he has secured $16.5 million of deferred money already. So $64 million of a $102 million deal has already been, if not put in the bank, will be put in the bank. It's already guaranteed. What's left on the deal is $38 million, $27 million that he'll make over the next 2 seasons. His actual salary, his take home each year for 26 and 27 is going to be $13.5 million. Plus, there's a $17.25 million club option in 2028, and there is a $1 million buyout attached to that club option. So he is owed, again, $38 million left in the deal, $28 million that he would make over the next 3 seasons. Again, 27 in salary for the next 2 years, and then $1 million buyout and a club option. And then you got $5 million in deferred money each season, which brings that total up to the $38 million. Now, can Edwin Diaz beat a $38 million deal in free agency? Even if he got the club option, could he beat 3 years, $55 million? 100%. He should blow that out of the water. But are you going to pay him another $100 million? I think that's where this gets interesting. The luxury tax for Edwin Diaz for the last couple of years has been $18.69 million if you round up. $18.69 million. So can you get another contract to fit under that same price range, a little less than the $20 million per? It's going to take, again, a big signing bonus and deferred money, but this is where I think the Mets can really come to terms with Edwin Diaz again because they know he wants to be a Met. So if you go to him right now and you give another 5-year deal, I think he signs. Like if you gave him the exact same deal, if you just wanted to copy and paste, we're going to start it over again, I think he would take that deal. And I don't even think that would be the worst thing in the world for the New York Mets, to be honest, if they did just give him the exact same contract. Is he as good as he was 2 years ago? No. Was he still one of the best relievers in baseball? Absolutely. So I wouldn't be scared of a 5-year deal, but I do think the Mets could maybe get him on a 4-year deal. I think that would obviously be more preferable. And for Edwin, you get to stay in New York. You get to tack on 2 more guaranteed years. Remember, the third year of this deal that's still left here is a club option. So a 4-year deal, which could still have a club option, could be a 4+1, whether it's a club option or even a player option, or maybe it's a vesting option if he saves 30 games or if he has a healthy season in whatever the year that would be before he hit free agency again. That would be what? If it's a 4-year deal and it's a 5th-year option, there's 26, 27, 2020. So if it's a 2030 option, that's a mutual option that vests based on whatever criteria. If he's an all-star, if he saves 30 games, or if he pitches 65 innings, who knows? Whatever the criteria is, if Edwin Diaz was to get, again, a 5-year deal, I think he could be very effective on that contract for sure. It's just a matter of how far are you willing to go to lock him up? Are you really willing to, once again, invest significantly for a closer? Or is the Mets motto, hey, we can churn and burn guys, we can figure stuff out? Who knows? We can find a different Edwin Diaz. We could find some guy in free agency that is going to be able to do what Edwin Diaz can at a lesser cost, like a Devin Williams, or can't really say Ryan Helsley, but there's Raisel Iglesias on the market. There's Robert Suarez on the market. There's other names. We'll talk about more of those in the next segment. But for me, you got to keep this guy because he is the foundation for the rest of that bullpen. He makes all the other conversations so much easier to have. But if you just instead say goodbye and think you can fill that void elsewhere, well, now you got to find a closer. Plus, you have to find 2 or 3 other arms at least to fortify that bullpen that just got ravaged this past year with injuries. Daniel Nunez, Danny Young. Who else am I missing? There's Max Kranick. That's 3 arms that you went into the 2025 season expecting to be big, big pieces that went down in Tommy John surgery, meaning that all of them are going to be out for the start of 2026. Hopefully you can get some of them back, but it's not guaranteed. Edwin Diaz is the bedrock that you can build that bullpen around. And he's also got some Mets history that he's chasing. He's 16 saves away from tying Armando Benitez for second most in franchise history. John Franco has the most at 276. That's going to be a tougher mountain to climb. But if Edwin Diaz, who saved 28 games this past year, let's just say he could average 30 saves over the next 4 seasons. Well, all of a sudden, he'd be sitting at 266 saves, 10 away from Franco. 5 years with the Mets, if he's healthy, he can absolutely break that record and go down as the all-time saves leader for the New York Mets. I just think that this is a guy that is going to be so much harder to replace than is going to be to keep. And the fact that he was amenable to the contract last time and he gave you something that was a little bit more team-friendly, granted, it was still $102 million guaranteed, but it was structured in a way that allowed the Mets to have a little bit more wiggle room because of the deferred money he was willing to take on. And maybe he'll take on deferred money again. Maybe he'll take on more deferred money because he wants to win. Regardless, Edwin Diaz is one of the best closers in Mets franchise history. And I don't see the free agent. You can't point me to one that I look at and say, oh, that's an upgrade. Because there's not any upgrade in the free agent market. Maybe in the trade market, but Mason Miller was already dealt. So who else are you going to find on the trade market that's going to really change the fortunes of your seasons or even your seasons to come? To me, Edwin Diaz is clearly the guy that Mets need to lock up to be their closer. And once they do that, I think they're in a good spot. So what we're going to talk about to close out the show is the alternatives to Edwin Diaz, but also how do the Mets cobble together a good bullpen behind him next season when so many guys just got hurt and went down throughout this year. So we're going to go through all of that to close out the show. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet Go Long. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. This isn't just another ED pill, it's a total game changer for your confidence. Go Long combines two doctor-trusted medications into one dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. If you want to get started, connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. And if prescribed, your treatment gets shipped discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to Rugiet.com. That's Rugiet.com. And use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet, Rugiet.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure you use our code so they know that we sent you. If the New York Mets don't sign Edwin Diaz, who do they sign? Really? You got Ryan Helsley. That didn't work. You got Devin Williams. Hasn't worked for him with the Yankees. Now, he looked pretty good in the playoffs last night. So I still think Devin Williams would be a great addition to the Mets bullpen. But would I just fully invest in Devin Williams to be the replacement for Edwin Diaz and not even look back at Edwin? No chance, because you don't know how Devin Williams is going to pitch in a Mets uniform. And there has to be doubts after the season that he just had. After being lights out for all those years in Milwaukee, he leaves a small market and he crumbles a little bit. So that's not a viable option. Robert Suarez has been great in San Diego. He's also sneaky old. Robert Suarez, and he also has an option in his contract, so he doesn't have to be a free agent. Suarez is 34. So you want to go to Robert Suarez because Edwin Diaz is getting old? That doesn't make sense. Raisel Iglesias, he's going to be out there. Been the Braves closer for the last couple of years. Poach him for a division rival. Awesome. He's 35. So I look at the free agent options on the table. Edwin Diaz is clearly the best closer on the board. So the Mets got to sign him. Now, if they do, their bullpen's not in the worst shape. Actually, one other thing I wanted to mention, there is no closer in waiting. I think that would be a big difference maker. You know, you had teams like, for example, you know, the Guardians. They had Cade Smith to step in when Emmanuel Clase went down this year with the gambling investigation. If you hadn't had Clase been available at the deadline and not been under that administrative leave or whatever they call it, they could have shot them and traded him because they had Cade Smith. The Mets don't have a top reliever in waiting. Maybe it's Dylan Ross. Maybe it's Ryan Lambert. Those guys had really good seasons in the minor leagues. Dylan Ross did make it up to the big leagues, was added to the 40, but he didn't make his debut just yet. So the Mets, if they had somebody who came up this year, like something similar to Daniel Nunez in 2024, minus the health concerns, a guy that came up and was lights out and showed that they can pitch and leverage, I think you'd have a little bit more pause and think, oh, we actually might have an internal candidate that can replace Edwin Diaz. But that's not something the Mets currently possess. Now, if they sign him, they got Brooks Raley, a $4.75 million club option. They will bring him back. AJ Minter has an $11 million player option. He'll be back, and he should be able to pitch down the stretch at least, probably even before the second half, I would think. But he'll definitely be a piece of this team. How big of a piece, that's to be determined. The Mets have Drew Smith, who's been recovering off of Tommy John. He has a $2 million club option for next season that they likely pick up, because why wouldn't they? They have Adbert Azalea, another guy that they picked up to have him rehab with them during this season when he was going through his Tommy John rehab, but a guy that they could certainly have in the bullpen next season. Huascar Braziman had a decent year. There are some options, but the Mets really do have to piece this thing together, and getting that central hub, getting that big piece with Edwin Diaz, and then being able to supplement him with some setup guys, it just puts you in a good spot. I would love it if the Mets brought back Tyler Rogers too, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I think Tyler Rogers very well could end up right back where he started with the Giants. He was always a huge part of that clubhouse, a real leader. He's been there for the longest time. He only been the longest tenured Giant before he got dealt. So I think that is something you have to consider. It'd be great to see Tyler Rogers back in a Mets uniform, though. I think he was really awesome down the stretch. It's just, does he even want to go back? It's not like he had a great time with the struggles the Mets were going through in those final 2 months. So I think they're going to have to piece this thing together, and it's going to take a lot more time spent on researching who's on the market to really pick, oh, it's going to be this reliever, and this reliever that makes sense. And I was even stray from trying to do that with the bullpen, because you just never know what a team's going to do. You never can predict who they're going to sign. But Edwin Diaz has to be signed. To me, it's a no-brainer. And I'd love it at the Mets over the next, well, not now, but once the season ends, once they get that 5-day window, I'd love it if they just got in a room with Edwin Diaz, got in a room with Pete Alonso, locked those two guys up, and went from there, because that's your building blocks. Like, those are pieces that are foundational for the New York Mets. If you lose them, very hard to replace them. If you keep them both, well, now you are operating in all your negotiations on better footing. You're in a better spot with free agents. You're in a better spot on the trade market, because you have the peace of mind of knowing that, oh, your starting lineup is going to be fine. You got Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. You're set. You will be okay offensively. Edwin Diaz, you have him to be your closer. So that gives you that piece that you know that you can count on. So when you're negotiating with the setup man, you don't have to feel the pressure of, oh, I can't miss out on this guy, because if Edwin Diaz walks, well, now who's your closer? So we'll see if the Mets are able to bring back Diaz on a contract that makes sense. I think as long as it's not longer than 5 years, I probably won't have any complaints. I think that's my line in the sand. The funny thing is, that's exactly what I said with Pete Alonso, but I think that really does set you up for a window, a new 5-year window with Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, and Edwin Diaz on their contracts, with each having the exact same amount of time on that deal. I think that is how you should do it, because after 5 years, you can always pivot away from all those guys, and you have a ton of money coming off the books. But in the meantime, right now, with this current team, I don't think it makes sense to move on from either of those guys. I think you should definitely pony up and spend. Now, speaking of spending, on tomorrow's show, we are going to do a payroll episode. How much money do the New York Mets have to spend? Do they have enough to go out and sign both of these guys and do more? Or if they re-sign Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz, is the spending over with? We're going to go through all of it on the show tomorrow. I really do appreciate all of you for tuning into the show today. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local host from each team, league-wide host from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.